insight brings choice, choice brings change, and change brings liberation. These are 3 points that we're going to come back to, because even with all of our technological advancements, we're going to be up against the same problems as our ancestors. We'll question what to be and how to be, and what all of this is for and to what end, and whether we're even free at all, and how meaning is even possible in a nonsensical, chaotic and absurd world. And if we're feeling down or frustrated or with a lack of hope for the future, what we need isn't so much of an answer as it is a reframe. That all of these are mysteries to be embraced, not problems to sit down and logically solve. So what we need to do is to create a life for ourselves, not just sit down and wait for meaning to magically appear. And I am unapologetically hopeful about this, which is also why I'm pursuing this enormous library building project to begin with and passing on all these book recommendations. So that's why today's book is an old favourite on this channel. It's Creating a Life by James Hollis. And the opening of this video was based on a quote from page 12 of this book, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into it in this lesson. The argument I want to make in this lesson actually is stated really beautifully on page 19, so let's jump straight into it. Again, as always, I'll put the quote on the screen. Therapy will not heal you, make your problems go away, or make your life work out. It will, quite simply, make your life more interesting. And this isn't a common thing that I hear online, but I think it has a lot of value and there's a lot of richness to it. So the story of humanity is passing on of stories. We want to hear about all these heroic efforts that go extremely well, but we are also drawn towards tragic stories where nothing goes as planned. And if we're not careful, we want to hear the highs and lows of others, but only experience the highs for ourselves. And this distorted view, it can get us into quite a lot of trouble. So we can hold on too tightly to certain conclusions and force the facts to suit us, rather than using those same facts to help inform our conclusions. And the more desperately we try to avoid the lows, the more rationalizations we have to come up with as to why they're not lows at all. So we begin this slow and steady descent into self-deception without realizing it. But we can avoid all of this by confronting ourselves and aiming in a healthier direction. So to reference that quote again, I don't need to be healed because there's nothing defective or wrong with me. I don't want my problems to go away because they might be pointing me in a more fulfilling direction in the long run without me realizing it right now. And I don't need my life to work out according to a specific plan because the process is always changing and dynamic. I'm just one human in amongst billions of others, let alone the ecology of the wider planet and the wider cultures I live with and the wider systems still. So it'd be very grandiose of me to assume that I can just set a plan and get on with it while the rest of the world stays the same. So inner work and self-inquiry aren't so much about fixing a problem, they're about embracing a mystery. And it's the same mystery that my ancestors dealt with and that my future descendants will deal with too, which is how can I create, embody and live a more interesting life? In fact, it's more than that. It's more specific than that. It's how can I create, embody and live a more interesting life in an ever-changing complex environment when others are also doing the same? So you might already know the famous quote from Socrates that the unexamined life is not worth living. And page 27 on here goes a little bit further than that still. What Socrates suggests is that the examined life expands the range of vision and of possible choice. Like therapy, the examined life makes one's existence qualitatively more interesting. Indeed, therapy is the best way I know to examine one's life, which is why everyone deserves to have a significant therapeutic encounter at some point. Not fueled by pathology or problem-solving motives, but by the hope to make one's life more interesting. So the inevitable question that I have to ask myself, and perhaps you're asking this too, is, well, why isn't my life more interesting? And let's focus in on one possible answer, which is distraction. So I know I'm using a lot of quotes here, but one more quote just from page 47 will help to frame this out quite nicely. Just this part here. As the outer cacophony dimmed, the orchestral range of the psyche grew more palpable. Behind the old saying that the cure for loneliness is solitude is the discovery that when one is alone, one is not alone, but present to a goodly company in a very rich dialogue with oneself. The chief pathology of our time is the capacity of the world to distract us from this conversation. It's really, really beautiful, isn't it? All these quotes. So we're never alone and we're never without purpose or meaning. The question is whether we pay attention to our inner nature or not. So the first three things that I said in this video were insight brings choice brings change, and change brings liberation. So if the insight is that we want to live a more meaningful life rather than just solve an endless list of problems, then this can give us more choices as to how we can start embracing the mysteries of life. So an interesting life starts with being aware of our potential distractions and intentionally not giving into them. And one very obvious example here is phone usage, social media in particular. So as our screen time goes up, so does our distractibility. Suddenly, instead of going on my own holidays and my own adventures, I'm just watching an endless feed of others going on their holidays and their adventures. So that's why for James Hollis, this is the major pathology of our time. And for me, this is the major paradox of our time. We've got more ways to communicate than ever before, but less to say than ever. So creating a life is all about pursuing this richness and this depth. The mysteries of life deserve this attention. And I've mentioned in another video this idea of dwelling in a place for a long time rather than just passing through. I think I worded it in that video as steeping in time, like leaving a tea bag in a cup of water to brew. And it's the same idea here, that if we're not careful, we might end up prioritizing the wrong thing. If I'm phoning my friend, I don't want to prioritize a clearer line if the voice on the other end is empty of stories to tell. So human depth needs to come before technological growth. And again, there's a lovely little quote on page 61 that can help to pull us out of this mess. So when we are being pulled deeply into something, even love, it hurts and opens us up to great suffering. But the willingness to open to depth is the chief way in which dignity and purpose return to life. We cease being small when we stand in the presence of the large. The chief symptom of our culture is banality. The chief antidote to banality is the willingness to accept the transformative suffering of depth. We cease being small when we stand in the presence of the large. This is why I'm using all these quotes. It's just absolutely unbelievably powerful wording from Mr. Hollis. So the exact opposite of a meaningful life is a banal life, a dull life. One without ups or downs or ebbs or flows. There's no mysteries, there's just problems and expectations. And if choice brings change and change brings liberation, then we have to accept a certain amount of courage is going to be required of us on this path. We have to have faith and trust in ourselves. And the awesome thing about inner work, in the truest sense of the word, is that the more depth that you pursue in yourself, the more height you're able to climb towards. They come linked together. And now that does bring with it its own difficulties, but they are more meaningful and more authentic difficulties. Ones that resonate with a deeper part of yourself rather than the defenses that you put up to keep yourself safe from the world. And it's understandable why we have these defenses, and I'm not criticizing that at all, but the whole purpose of therapy, according to this book at least, is that we're just blocking out potential sources of meaning and fulfillment, not just the difficulties that we're trying to avoid. So we don't want to be healed or have all of our problems go away. Like I've been saying throughout all of this, we want an interesting life. And it's hard to be and stay small if we can fully grasp what an interesting life looks like for us. When we choose to go on that adventure, it pulls us up and away from this banality, and we cease to stay small because the gravitational pull of this grander life, it pulls us with it. I've already created a deep dive on this topic if you'd like to take this a little bit further, because by definition, this is going to take us out of our comfort zone and stretch our limits. And we need to develop a certain level of psychological maturity to help manage the difficulties of anxiety and ambiguity and ambivalence that come along for the journey on this interest in life. And likewise, for most of us, we get pulled towards something bigger in the second half of life, which is why I recommended this book, Once Upon a Midlife, in the previous lesson. It's a range of stories to help you find meaning once youth has ended. So just because maybe you've settled down and had some kids or got a mortgage or whatever it might be, it doesn't mean that your adventures have to stop. Or if you're more focused at this point in time in looking at your own upbringing and your own childhood to see where these stories come from in the first place, that's why we did a lesson on healing the child within. And if we think about it as creating a life, that's going to slot nicely in amongst these books. So we've got this one for childhood and the first half of life, and this one for midlife and the journeying into that second half. If you want something practical to take away from this lesson, that would be it. Like reading these 3 books, and you'll find exactly how to make your life more interesting on a personal level. You'll be able to identify the problems and difficulties in your childhood, and then you'll be able to look to counterbalance and resolve them as an adult, and then create an interesting life out of the synthesis of the two. To see how your childhood has shaped you, and to see how you'd like to shape yourself in the future. Again, creating an interesting life out of the combination. And this takes us full circle. The insight brings choice, choice brings change, and change brings liberation. So you don't necessarily need therapy to heal you, because it can't anyway. It won't make your problems go away or make your life work out. It will quite simply make your life more interesting. It's a tough lesson to film, this one, because it naturally wants to pull into so many different directions. But I think I'm just going to leave it here before it gets a bit too scattered. If you're still feeling quite small and need something large to consider, then in the next lesson we're going to consider this idea of deep ecology. So that might be quite eye-opening if you want to consider your place in the bigger picture. But I'm intentionally going to leave it here for now. Enjoy that little book stack if you do decide to buy them, and I will see you in a future lesson. See you then.